Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies as we continue with part 4, the Holy Royal Arch of Jerusalem, from the Higher Degrees Handbook by JSM Ward. Chapter 3, the Holy Royal Arch of Jerusalem. The marked degree completes the second degree, but to the younger Master Mason, it must be obvious that a further degree is needed to complete the third degree. The genuine signs were lost, but were they never rediscovered? Moreover, since they were known to 3 people, why could not the 2 survivors have appointed a successor and given him the lost signs? The Royal Arch sets out to give at any rate one answer to the question. What were the gen signs of a Master Mason? Briefly, it was a lost word, but that word conveys in symbolism a most interesting and illuminating explanation of the nature of God. Indeed, the teaching of the craft may be summed up by saying that it teaches a man his duty to his neighbor, whereas the arch instructs him in his duty towards God. What is the nature of God therein depicted? It is a Trinity, but not the Christian Trinity. It is more like the Hindu Trinity of Creator, Preserver, and Destroyer. It also clearly indicates the union of body, soul, and spirit, and shows by that union we become united with God. Thus, in its very essence, the Royal Arch is supremely mystical and teaches of the beatific vision. The legend deals with the discovery of the lost signs and the rebuilding of the temple after the return from the captivity. It will thus be seen that the city of the degree is from the Old Testament, and this fact must be noted. But there is another explanation of the lost word, which is given in some of the other higher degrees, namely that the lost word is Christ, the Logos. But we have yet obtained an answer to the very natural question. Why could not the other 2, who knew the sign, appoint a successor? The full exoteric explanation, and also, how was it that the signs came to be deposited in a place of security, is given in one of the cryptic degrees, to which we shall refer later in this book. Briefly, however, 3 persons were necessary in order to convey it, but in reality, of course, this is symbolism, and implies that body, soul, and spirit must be in union before they can fully comprehend the divine Trinity, while, on the other hand, no living man, trampled by the bonds of the flesh, can really comprehend the nature of God, nor even do so immediately after death, for our souls will not yet be sufficiently evolved. On the other hand, it is clearly taught that our body does not completely perish, but is rather transmuted, even as St. Paul himself says, will take place at the day of judgment. This is no doubt a very profound dogma and difficult for us to understand. But if we can realize the fact that matter as well as spirit is in its original a manifestation of God, and therefore a part of Him, we shall perceive that matter also is indestructible. Although its form may change, this fact is perfectly well recognized by modern science. In the original form of the Royal Arch, which still survives in Bristol, in Scotland, and in America, the candidate must pass through 4 veils, which correspond to various spiritual states of existence which lie beyond the grave, each being a little nearer to the divine being than was the previous one. The 4 veils are colored respectively blue, purple, red, and white. At each veil, the candidate is challenged by a guardian of the veil who demands of him the word and sign of the previous veil. This ceremony in Scotland forms a distinct degree known as the Excellent Master, and the jewel thereof is a pinnacle set with brilliance, which jewel, of course, represents, among other things, man and his 5 senses. The penal sign of this degree is of great antiquity and is made by Vishnu, when in the form of the lion incarnation, Vishnu descended to earth to overthrow an evil giant which was oppressing the world, and slew him by disemboweling him. In Scotland, no English Royal Arch Mason can be admitted to a Scottish chapter unless he previously receives the degree of Excellent Master, which degree he cannot receive unless he has taken the mark. The passing of the white veil is really an integral part of the arch ceremony, and the sign corresponding to the signs of the other veils is one well known to the English Royal Arch Masons. It is only after having passed this barrier that the candidate is able to obtain the real signs of a Master Mason, the ceremony being very similar to our own Royal Arch. In other words, it is only when we have passed through various spiritual stages of existence that we shall at length be able to comprehend the nature of God. The deletion of the veils from our ceremony has tended to obscure this important lesson in the English form of the RA. A slightly different lesson is taught us by the fate of our predecessor in the craft. He could not have revealed the sign even if he had wished to do so, for it was an experience and therefore could not be communicated by words to any living man. We cannot go into detailed explanation on this deeply mystical ceremony in a book of this nature, but a brief explanation of a certain vault which plays a prominent part therein is essential. Like all symbols in Freemasonry, it has several meanings, but the two most important are A. The underworld, or the grave into which man descends at death, and from which his soul ultimately ascends to the realms of light. B. The mystical interpretation is that it is the middle chamber, that dark recess of the soul, where dwells the divine spark. The jewel of this degree depicts quite clearly the nature of God, the double triangle within the circle and the point therein, which is represented by the all-seeing eye, is the age-old symbol for God. The triangle within the circle represents the spirit within the circle of infinity, and is peculiarly associated with the Creator. Royal Arch Masons will perceive the significance of this fact in connection with the altar. The point within the circle among the Hindus stands for Paramatman, the all-pervading, the source and end of all. The triangle with the point downwards is the symbol of rain or water, and represents the preservative side of God, or Vishnu, while the triangle with the point upward represents fire, whose flames go up to heaven, and is therefore the emblem of the destructive, or rather the transformative, side of God, or Shiva. This great symbol was sacred to Babylonian, Egyptian, and Jew, and had to each the same inner meaning. It is also sacred to the modern Hindu, and was so to the ancient Mexican, and indeed is one of the most venerated symbols in the world. It will thus be seen that the jewel of the Royal Arch, far from being a mere ornament, contains in itself a summary of the sublime teachings of that degree, the more so as it also has a triple tau. With regard to the tau cross, we have already shown in our earlier handbooks that in its origin, it was a phallic symbol representing the creative power. We shall remember also that we make a tau cross every time we receive the sign in the craft degrees. Thus the Master Mason has himself made the triple tau. It is also worth reminding our readers that only those who have passed the chair and actually ruled a lodge are entitled to wear 3 tau crosses on their aprons. As a phallic symbol, it became an emblem of the Creator, and also, in time, of our animal passions, which must be trampled underfoot if we are to advance in spiritual knowledge. By the time we have reached the arch, symbolically, this has been done. And we are reminded of this by the union of these three towels beneath the triangles, emblems of the Spirit. Moreover, though this is essentially a non-Christian degree, we cannot forget that there were 3 crosses on Calvary. The presence of the triple towel, after the experience we have had of it in the craft, shows how carefully each degree leads us on the next. And it also conveys this important lesson. Each degree in the craft taught the evolution and purification of 1. The body, 2. The soul, 3. The spirit. These 3, now in perfect union, rest under the shadow of the supreme being depicted by the double triangle. Thus, the presence of the towel crosses teaches us that man will ultimately rest in the presence of the King of Kings. In fact, the royal arch is full of interesting symbolism. The colors of the regalia, red and purple, the shape of the altar, the position of the 3 principles, all convey important lessons, but we cannot spare the space in a small handbook like this to enlarge further on this degree. Nevertheless, one cannot omit pointing out that as in the craft, the worshipful master represented the spirit, the senior warden the soul, and the junior warden the body, so do the corresponding officers in the royal arch, although here they are no longer separated, but are side by side, and in all cases act as one. The reason for this is that the royal arch depicts the sublime state wherein body, soul, and spirit are truly one, and are at peace in the presence of God, now properly comprehended. Our readers will thus perceive that no craft mason can consider he has fulfilled his duties as a mason until he has taken the royal arch, for he has not recovered those lost signs which he has promised to try and find. The regalia includes apron and a sash of purple and red. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.